Welcome to our Winner's Circle segment, everybody. My guest today is a four-time tour level winner. He's a four-time Classic qualifier, three-time FLW Championship qualifier. He's earned $1.7 million throughout his career. He's one of very few anglers to ever win a BASS event, an FLW event, and a Major League Fishing event. He did a couple of those just in the last couple of weeks. Please welcome to the podcast, Justin Lucas.
Hey, what's up, guys? I appreciate you having me on.
It's been a wild couple of weeks for you. We were setting this first interview up for the Sturgeon Bay event, and you said you'd be happy to come on. Just had to get through this next event at Lake Erie. And what do you know? You went out and won that one, too. Been a crazy couple of weeks, huh?
Man, it really has. You know, I would have never have thought after not winning for 4 years that I would just all of a sudden win two pretty much in a row, 2 out of 3 events like that. So super thankful for that. Of course, I've grown to love smallmouth bass, and I just feel like every year I'm getting a little bit better at them. And I think it's finally, I hadn't won on them until this year. And I just feel like I've learned a lot over the last few years that have kind of, made for these couple wins to happen.
Yeah, well, the first thing I want to ask you is please tell us, the listening audience, what does it feel like to catch 140 pounds of bass in one day?
It's pretty unbelievable, I did the math, and I figured I ended up catching one every 9 minutes that day. That was what I figured out. I weighed one every 9 minutes anyway. It was crazy. When you talk about that many fish, normally you go out, you fish all day with a buddy, and you say, yeah, we caught 60 plus fish today or something like that, and we fished for 12 hours. But to do it in 7.5 hours during a tournament, the other thing is I never even moved spots. So I never even wasted time running. And, I was able to fish the whole time and felt like I was getting bit every other throw for 7.5 hours. So I just don't know. I don't know if that record will be broken for a long time. Some people say it'll never be broken. I think they're all made to be broken, but it might be a while on that one.
Justin, I was following the the updates, and I thought something was wrong with my computer, because I couldn't. What's this over the 100-pound mark in one day? I mean, we do that sometimes in it may be like at a Harris chain or an Okeechobee for 4 days, but we don't do that in one day.
Yeah, that's a really good problem to have when you think when people think that that the numbers aren't even right. It's so good, So it was special, man. It was a special day. It was a special week, and that was the only time I'd ever told my wife in 10 years of doing this that I felt like I could actually win a tournament. I had a really good practice and just was able to make it work, capitalize on it, and I'm thankful for that.
Let's talk a little bit about that. For those people that don't know much about Sturgeon Bay, what kind of a fishery is it? I mean, obviously it's big water, but what's your mindset coming into a body of water like that?
Well, so it is a great lake. It's part of Lake Michigan, and Sturgeon Bay is just a small part of Lake Michigan, really.
It's really where you guys launched from, right?
I'm sorry?
It's just where you guys launched out of, right?
Yeah, well, we could, we had a trailering policy for that event, so we could launch, you really could launch just about anywhere you wanted that was in Wisconsin waters. And there's so much water to fish up there. I mean, you're talking Door County is basically one big giant peninsula that separates Green Bay from Lake Michigan, and Sturgeon Bay is just a smaller bay off of Green Bay, and it's huge in itself. So, I knew that Sturgeon Bay was a big spawning bay, huge spawning bay. I knew that thousands of smallmouth spawn in there, and my goal was just to try and find them at the first place they were moving out, because they weren't that far done from spawning when we were there. So I knew that they weren't going to be all the way out on the main lake. I knew that I needed to find them in between, and I just pretty much call it like intercepting them, catching them in that halfway spot.
Okay, so I was going to ask you, coming into the tournament, as far as a pre-fish concept, because I mean, whenever we go to any lake, we have a mindset of what we think is going to be happening. What was your mindset going into the pre-fish?
My mindset was just to, kind of see what the fish were doing. I didn't know if they were going to be spawning or post-spawn. But as soon as I got there, I put the trolling motor in the water, went up shallow, wasn't seeing any empty beds, wasn't seeing any, old beds or anything. So it really kind of told me that they had been done for at least a few weeks and that those fish were already moving out off the bank. And once I knew that, I knew where to start looking for them.
Okay, can you tell us about what that next move would be? Because I think that's the thing that intrigues most of us is how do you adjust to that? They're not up there spawning. So what's that next thing you look for?
Yeah, so the next thing I look for is, they're going to move out to 10 to 15 feet of water, right? They don't need to go super deep right away. 10 to 15 is pretty comfortable depth after they get done spawning, and I'm looking for the first pieces of cover out there. So one of my best spots was just a rocky point that met some sand, and then a lot of my other stuff was just some grass patches on a big sand flat. And if they had gone further out, there was some rock and points further out on that flat, but they were holding on that middle ground stuff just because they hadn't been done that long and they just haven't moved that far out yet.
Okay, well now let's talk about that epic day one. Like I said, I still am blown away by what I saw that night on the upload. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. Tell us about how that all came together.
Yeah, it was. I knew that area had some fish. I didn't know how many fish were in there. I really only caught a couple fish in there in practice, but I wasn't even going to start there, and there was nobody on it before lines were, the boat official said lines in. I had a few minutes, so I ran over there. I idled over the point. I saw like 7 or 8 smallmouth down there, and normally if you see them on down imaging, there's quite a few. They don't show up very well on down imaging when you're idling around like a spotted bass or largemouth will. And so I knew when I saw 7 or 8, I'm like, well, I've got to start here. There's got to be a bunch there right now. And turned around, waited for him to say lines in. First cast, I caught one, and it was just game on after that. And, what was crazy is I was catching so many, and it wasn't like spooking the school, letting them go back, and going back down there and telling on me. Basically, I thought that they would stop biting way quicker than they did, but they bit for a long time.
Yeah, there were a couple other guys that caught over 100 pounds that first day too, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, I think the first few days there were some guys that had over 100 pounds, but that was the number. It was like it was going to be hard to get over 100, and to have 141 is just ridiculous.
That's a different planet. So, did you dial into the bait you were going to throw? And we should probably talk about what you threw the whole time there. But did you get that dialed into during pre-fish, or was that something you picked up right there at the beginning of the first day?
Well, drop shot's the best bait there is, period, for smallmouth. So, or it's the best technique. And then the max scent flatworm, of course, from Berkeley, in my opinion, is the best bait for smallmouth. And so it was really simple. I mean, honestly, I had a couple other things tied on in practice. I made a couple casts with them, but I made 99% of the casts I made that week with the drop shot, probably more than 99%, honestly. 99.5%. Like I just knew what I was going to throw. I knew when they're, it doesn't matter if they're spawning or post spawn. When those smallmouth are going to eat a plastic, there's nothing better than a drop shot. Then now with max scent, there's nothing better than max scent.
Excellent. Well, now let's take a look at the Lake Erie event now. Lake Erie was a different event for you. A lot of moving around, is that right?
Well, I didn't move around. I was in one area and just made really short moves in one area. Like it could be 100 yards, 500 yards, something like that. But I bounced around a lot as far as that goes. You know, I idle to a lot of my spots or barely hop on pad. And, I was hitting a lot more isolated pieces of cover there, just trying to catch one fish. Lake Erie compared to Sturgeon Bay is not a numbers place, but it does have good quality. Most of the fish are 3.5 to 4.5 pounds. It's just really hard to get. It's really hard, honestly, to get 6 or 7 bites a day. Maybe not so much if there's not a big tournament going on, but once you put all the good fishermen on the lake and the pressure, it all changes.
So yeah, you mentioned Lake Erie. You have a lot of water available to you. Some guys made that trip all the way to St. Clair. Is that right?
Yeah, several guys did. I knew it wouldn't be one out there. It's too far away. You're talking about running 50 miles across the ocean. And I just knew that there's no way it can be one out there. So I never practiced out there. I know guys had some incredible practices out there. But again, that's also fishing 8 hours, 9 hours, 10 hours, 12 hours a day in practice. And that's just not the case in a tournament on a big body of water like that when you're making that run. Those guys, at the most they ever got was probably 4 hours of fishing. And that's just a lot of pressure on yourself in 4 hours, not to mention hoping that you don't beat your equipment up to the point that it's not working when you get there. So too many factors in it for me. I stayed ultra close to the ramp, 12 to 15 miles away, and just tried to grind it out, make the most of the bites that I got. And, you know, I was able to make it happen. I was totally caught off guard winning that tournament. Felt like I could have a good tournament. Didn't know a win was in the cards that week, but I'm never going to argue with it.
So the picture that's making its way around Instagram and the internet is you catching some pretty major air. Was that at Erie?
Yeah, that was at Erie. And honestly, you know, the picture looks way worse than it was. I mean, I was only going probably 10 miles. I see ya. I was only going probably 12 miles an hour at that point. But the waves are just so big, you know, it was just standing you straight up in the air when you were trying to get over the waves.
So take us through these 4 days now at Erie. Like I said, you moved around a little bit, but stayed in that same area. I'm dying to hear about this space missile I've heard you talk about or read about you talking about. What was that thing? Did we ever figure it out?
Well, I know it's man-made, but it's definitely not an old channel marker. I had a friend look at it on a camera the next day on, I guess it was Saturday after the tournament. And he said it's man-made, but he didn't know what it was. So it's some kind of piece of steel. I have no idea what it is. I said a space missile just because I would hook it, and I never got hung on it, but I would hook it for a split second. It would just bend my hook. So I knew it was something, you know, not just a rock. Rocks don't just bend your hook tips like this does. And anyway, it was. I still don't know what it was. I'd like to know one day. If I wasn't afraid to dive down there, I would do it.
But that was a significant piece of cover though, because it was a current break for those fish, right?
Yeah, I caught about half of my fish around that thing. You know, they used it as a current break. They got on top of it to feed. It was a big spot too. You know, that thing was probably 20 feet long by 5 feet tall. And yeah, it was just a good piece of cover out there for them on a less obvious area. So not that many guys found it. A couple other guys found it, but it didn't get the pressure, and it wasn't just, you know, another rock like everything else out there. It was something different that really attracted them.
So, you know, one of the things you're still drop shotting at Lake Erie, I think. Is that correct?
It's same exact rig, nothing different.
What I wanted to talk about was the line. What is your choice of line in that situation? Do you back your reel with braid and use fluorocarbon? What do you do?
Yeah, so I do Berkeley X5 braid to 8-pound trilene 100% fluorocarbon leader. And that's how I do all of my drop shot fishing. I've been doing it that way for years. It's worked really well for me over the years, and there's just really no reason that I've had to change it up from that.
Excellent. So now, how do you approach these different tournament formats? The Major League Fishing, you're encouraged to catch as many fish as you can. FLW, it's a heaviest bag. It would seem like FLW, you might need to look for a kicker fish sometimes, whereas the Major League, you want to just keep catching them. How do you approach two different formats like that?
Well, since we switched to a 2 pound minimum on Major League Fishing, I feel like that really made all the difference in the world for us in our format. We're targeting the same fish, in practice in a Major League Fishing event now that we would in a 5-fish tournament.
Okay.
And so really you don't practice that much different. Really the only difference is in a Major League Fishing event, you don't want to run around as much on your big motor. You really want to keep the trolling motor wet. And in a FLW event, you can afford to take a gamble, if you want to run and think you can get one bite. If you've got 4 good ones or 5 fish and you need a big bite, you can take that chance and that gamble. And most of the time in a Major League Fishing event, you can't take the gamble. You got to keep your trolling motor wet. You got to keep fishing. And now you got to keep putting quality fish in the boat.
Yeah, it's just a fascinating way of conducting tournaments, that you can do them so differently, and they're still both phenomenal events.
Yeah, I mean, I enjoy fishing both. I really enjoy fishing both, to be honest with you, because there's a lot of perks on the Bass Pro Tour, and then the FLW Tour is just it's the traditional stuff. It's what we're used to, so it's nice to fish some of that, but there's no doubt the intensity and knowing the time, the score tracker, the boat official updating you, all that stuff in a Bass Pro Tour event, you're never safe. And it's a lot more intense on the Bass Pro Tour. I felt like these FLW super events were really just a good time, not nearly as much pressure or intensity in those events. So I enjoy them both, and I hope I can fish them both in the future.
Just wanted to talk a little bit. We're getting close to the end here, but I just wanted to talk to you about your versatility. Now, your first 2 career wins came on tidal impoundments, the Delta, which I think you grew up pretty close to the Delta, if I'm not mistaken, and then you also won on the Potomac. Don't those 2 fisheries kind of fish the same?
Yeah, they're both tidal water fisheries. They do fish a little bit different, but somewhat the same. And yeah, I mean that was something for me for a long time now. I was thinking, man, I'm only ever going to win on a tidal body of water, and that's why it was really nice to win on a Great Lake with a, spinning rod in my hand, finesse fishing, because I felt like over the last few years I learned how to do that. I just haven't been able to put a win, in the books yet. So it felt good. So now I got 2 tidal water wins, 2 Great Lakes wins, and now I got to find something else, some type of regular lake to win on.
Yeah, I was thinking about that today. I was thinking, to be able to, I mean, guys definitely have their strengths, and if you're a power type angler, it's understood you're going to do well in those kind of events. But to be able to do well on those kind of places like the Delta and the Potomac, and then also to win tour events, not just on one Great Lake, but on 2 Great Lakes, that's phenomenal.
Yeah, man, I'll take it. I never would have thought that I would I've won 2 events in 1 year. That's something I'll be able to talk about for a long time, and not many guys get to win 2, in 1 year. So super thankful for it. Of course, the payouts, in the FLW Super event were awesome too. I got that Phoenix Boats bonus, and yeah, everything just worked out, man. Talk about turning a bad year around to a really good one. And that's a never give up situation for you right there.
Yep. Well, Justin, you're arguably the hottest angler in the sport right now. I'm sure that we could probably talk about other people, but there's nobody out there that's won 2 out of the last 3 events. And best of everything to you in the future. What's next for you?
Some downtime. I'm being daddy right now. My little guy's calling me, wanting me to play ball and chase the chickens outside. So that's what I'm doing right now. Priorities.
Hey, Justin, thanks for being with us today. Really enjoyed talking to you, and we'll get together again with you real soon.
All right, guys. Thanks for having me.